The Interstellar Allied Academy was an architectural marvel suspended in orbit over the temperate moon of Lyra Tau. Vi. Every surface gleamed with polished alloys and glowing veins of data conduit. It wasn't just the most prestigious training. Ground in the galaxy, it was a symbol of cooperation, unity, and survival. Within its silver corridors, cadets of every species walked, slithered, hovered, or crawled to their courses. This cycle, 312 elite students had been admitted. Among them was one species the others whispered about more than any other. Human. Cadet Marcus Vega stepped into the vast safety procedures auditorium wearing the standard gray-black academy uniform, sleeves rolled, collar loose, his dark eyes. Scanned the amphitheater, where over 100 alien cadets were settling into their seats. He walked to the back row without fanfare, ignoring the subtle glances in his direction. He wasn't surprised. He knew how they viewed humans, Deathworlders, unrefined, primal. Reckless. It didn't bother him. The air shifted as Commander Trin entered a towering, six-armed Yelka with crystalline plating and a reputation for merciless efficiency. She marched to the center of the stage as the lights dimmed, activating the hollow projectors above her. With a gesture of two hands and a vocal click from her mandibles, the first hologram flared to life. "Welcome, cadets," she intoned, her voice a high-frequency vibration translated through personal implants. "Today, we begin with the most important module of your training, safety protocols and hazard response." A galaxy-spanning sigh of exasperation filled the room. "Make no mistake," Trin continued, unbothered, "safety is not optional. Without it, your assignments will end in injury, catastrophe, or death. Some of you come from gentle worlds, others from harsh ones. But in this academy, safety standardization is universal." Images rotated above her: catastrophic station breaches, chemical leaks, structural collapses. Screams echoed faintly from the sound-enhanced simulations. "Protocol saves lives," Trin said. "Deviation results in failure." Marcus leaned back, arms crossed. For him, this was review. He'd grown up in a scrapyard colony on Mars' outer edge, where breathing the wrong air, touching the wrong panel, or misjudging a metal stress line could kill you by 12. On Earth, survival wasn't a checklist. It was instinct. The cadet. Beside him, a reptilian with 6 eyes and scales the color of rust leaned closer. "You taking notes?" Marcus shrugged. "Don't need to." The alien tilted its head, puzzled. "But these are the protocols." "I know," Marcus replied with a slight grin. "I've lived them." On stage, Trin launched into the first of 20 modules, breached hull procedures. A schematic of a Terran-class freighter rotated in the air, showing emergency hatches, pressure zones, decompression behavior, and suit protocols. Cadets scribbled frantically or recorded with ocular implants. Acronyms, sequences, and fail-safes poured out of Trin's mouth like a tide of survival knowledge. "To be clear," Trin said sharply, "under no circumstances is a cadet to initiate manual override without confirming pressure seal integrity. Accidents from override protocol breaches make up 13% of all cadet fatalities across the last 50 cycles." Marcus tapped his fingers on the seat rail. He remembered being 12, holding a torch in his father's EVA suit while they hot-patched a breached cargo door in freezing vacuum. No seal integrity confirmation, no backups. Just timing, guts, and luck. Trin continued with fire suppression response, how to detect, respond to, and suppress various types of blaze depending on atmospheric composition and fuel source. Then toxic. Gas containment followed by power relay overload management. Marcus listened. But more than that, he compared. This was the galaxy's way of teaching safety. Controlled, Linear, rule-bound. Earth didn't do controlled. It did react or die. When Trin finally dismissed the class 2 hours later, the alien cadets filtered out slowly, buzzing with nervous chatter. Several complained about the complexity. Others fretted about memorization. Marcus remained in his seat a moment longer. Watching them, he had no intention of arguing with their approach. But something told him that when it came time to prove these lessons in action, when a station lost pressure or a drill went sideways, they'd see that. Safety wasn't about rules. It was about readiness. And when that moment came, Marcus Vega would be ready to show them the difference. He walked out without a word. 3 days after the safety lecture, Simulation Chamber 9 came online. It was one of the Academy's most advanced hazard training facilities, an immersive environment designed to replicate the chaos of a deep space industrial accident. The chamber could simulate dozens of emergencies, electrical fires, oxygen leaks, gravitational shifts, coolant bursts, or collapsing bulkheads. Everything was real enough to trigger panic, but regulated tightly enough to prevent actual harm. In theory, each cadet was scheduled to enter individually. The objective was simple: identify and neutralize all threats using the exact procedures. From the safety lecture, deviations were monitored and penalized. Improvisation was not encouraged. Cadet Nashil went first. The avian Farron trembled slightly as she entered the pressurized hatch, her feathers puffing under stress. Following every step with textbook precision, she restored pressure to a collapsed corridor, activated the suppression system on a contained plasma fire, and escaped a simulated coolant burst using regulation-issue protective foam. Her time, 12 minutes, 18 seconds. 2 procedural corrections needed. Not bad. Then came Cadet Hoxel, a slime-bodied Murgathy who moved slowly but methodically, splitting parts of his mass to simultaneously engage 2 different hazard systems. His ingenuity was praised, but Trin noted he'd skipped a temperature scan before engaging the emergency relay. More cadets followed. Each had their strengths and weaknesses, but all clung tightly to the manual's protocols. That was the rule. Then it was Marcus Vega's turn. He stood as his name echoed through the chamber's intercom. The other cadets turned. Many were curious. A few wore mocking expressions. The human was strong and fast, sure, but would that help him now? Not in a test designed for precision. Marcus didn't wait for ceremony. He walked briskly to the entry platform, pulled on his helmet, and secured the seal with a single twist. No hesitation. His movements were practiced, not robotic but natural. Lived. As the airlock hissed open, Commander Trin made a note: simulation start. Inside the chamber, the scenario launched. A mock industrial sector on an asteroid mining. RIG. Gravity fluctuated slightly. A red warning light pulsed at the far end of the hallway. Smoke not toxic, but thick spilled from the ventilation systems. Marcus didn't pause. He ran. He reached the control panel beside a failing door and saw that its power conduit had shorted. Protocol called for isolation, diagnostic scan, then fiber reroute. Marcus didn't do that. He grabbed the backup cable in the emergency kit, ripped open the access panel, and hardwired it by hand. Sparks flew, but the system came alive. Door unlocked. He advanced to the main chamber where a simulated coolant pipe was leaking in all directions. The temperature was near freezing, fog clouding the area. Cadets before him had activated the neutralization. Spray remotely. Marcus didn't even reach for the control. He tore a cloth from his belt, repurposed from an old cleaning rag he'd tucked away, and wrapped it around his face. With narrowed eyes, he scanned the pipe and spotted the failing valve. Without protection, he dove straight through the fog, bracing his boot against the wall for leverage, and twisted the valve hard. Metal groaned. It sealed behind the observation glass. Commander Trin's mandibles clicked once in alarm. The other cadets stared, jaws dropping. None had even dared enter that fog zone. A simulated fire erupted on the next floor, pressure-induced plasma ignition. Most cadets had used auto-suppression systems. Marcus grabbed a loose panel, turned it into a makeshift shield, and charged through the hazard zone. Once past, he manually yanked the fuel relay from its port and crushed the ignition feed beneath. His boot when the simulation ended, Marcus walked out of the chamber coughing but smiling. Time, 4 minutes and 11 seconds, the AI reported. All hazards neutralized, 1 manual override, no breaches. No damage to systems, no suit compromise. Silence. Absolute silence. Then one cadet whispered, "That wasn't protocol." Another added, "That was suicidal." Commander Trin stood, arms folded, unreadable. Marcus pulled off his helmet. "You said we could adapt if needed. I just adapted faster." And with that, he walked back to his seat, past a stunned line of cadets still processing what they'd seen. He hadn't just completed the simulation. The debriefing chamber was silent as cadets filed in, many still glancing sideways at Marcus Vega. Commander Trin stood at the center, her 6 arms clasped behind her back, all 4 of her eyes fixed on the large display at her side. It showed a slowed-down replay of Simulation Chamber 9, every step Marcus had taken. Every bypass, every manual override paused and analyzed in precise holographic detail. "Begin review," Trin said. Voice crisp. "Got the footage." Began Marcus, sprinting into the chamber. Marcus hardwiring the panel by hand. Marcus ducking through smoke, sealing valves, diving through plasma zones like he'd done it 100 times before. The cadets watched in awed silence. Some leaned forward. Others looked uncomfortable. Commander Trin turned to face them. "You have all been trained to follow the Federation's standardized safety protocol. 26 chapters, 97 failsafes, and over 6,000 contingencies." Cadet Vega, she gestured toward Marcus, who sat calm and unreadable in the second row, ignored 21 procedural steps and violated 10 core regulations. A few cadets blinked. One quietly whispered, "He still passed." "Yes," Trin said sharply. "Not only did he pass, he excelled. No simulated casualties, no damage to systems. Fastest time recorded in Chamber 9 in over 10 cycles." She let the words hang in the air like a challenge. "Explain yourself, Cadet Vega." Marcus stood up slowly. "With respect, Commander, the protocols are designed to account for average reaction times and interspecies capabilities." "But I'm not average. Earth isn't average." Trin's mandibles clicked once in contemplation. "So you believe the protocols don't apply to you?" "No," Marcus said. "I believe they're useful. Just not always fast enough. Where I come from, hesitation kills. Thinking about step 8 when you're bleeding from step 1? That's how you die." The rust-scaled cadet beside him raised a trembling hand. "But the protocols are for safety, for control." Marcus nodded. "Exactly. They're designed to manage the chaos. But Deathworlders, we live in the chaos. We don't manage it. We survive it. Earth doesn't hand you a checklist. It hands you a fire and dares you to live." Commander Trin narrowed her eyes. "So you abandoned safety for instinct?" "I trusted instinct," Marcus corrected. "I've had to reroute a coolant burst mid-blizzard on a Martian outpost with no gloves. I've put out electrical fires with my jacket. I didn't learn that in a lecture. I learned it because I had no choice." There was silence again, this time heavier. One of the aquatic cadets spoke next. Her voice filtered through a translator bubble. "You didn't follow safety, you were safety." Marcus looked at her, surprised. "I guess Yeah, I was the safety system. At least I acted like one. Commander Trin turned back to the display. A freeze frame showed Marcus mid-leap, shielding. His face with a panel. Feet lifted mid-stride over a simulated burst of plasma. She sighed. There is merit, she said reluctantly, in instinctive action. In environments where time is limited and hazards escalate quickly, it is sometimes better to act than to recite procedure. Several cadets looked shocked. One even gasped. But, Trin continued, voice rising, that does not mean protocol is obsolete. It exists because, for most species, instinct leads to panic. Panic leads to death. Most cadets need steps, need systems. Earth's methods are not scalable. They are exceptional. You, Cadet Vega, are exceptional. Marcus shrugged. Only by Federation standards. Back home, I'm average. That reply sent a quiet ripple of unease through the room. Trin closed the file on the display. Effective immediately, Cadet Vega's performance will be logged as a case study in adaptive emergency response. His methods are not to be emulated without clearance. However, she paused, then added something that made every cadet freeze. A supplemental module based on Terran improvisation will be developed for future training. Optional, but highly encouraged, Marcus blinked. That was not what he expected. The debrief ended shortly after, but the murmurs didn't stop. As cadets stood to leave, they cast new looks at Marcus, no longer dismissive, but curious. A few even respectful. One large, tusked creature from a high-gravity world clapped him on the back. You're crazy, he muttered. I like it. Marcus just smiled. He hadn't followed the rules. He had shown them that survival wasn't always taught. Sometimes it was lived. The academy was silent, too silent. Cadet Marcus Vega had just finished lunch in the mess hall when the klaxons began. A high-pitched, rising tone blared through the facility, followed by a sharp announcement in every known galactic tongue. Hazard drill Delta now in progress. This is not a test. All cadets to engage emergency response protocols. Command staff will not intervene. Begin simulation. Every cadet froze. Hazard drill Delta was infamous. Unlike other drills, it was unannounced, unsupervised, and randomized. It mimicked the conditions of a real-world catastrophe without safety nets, without warnings, and without step-by-step support. It was a crucible, a test of instinct as much as training, and no one, not even the instructors, knew when it would trigger. Chaos exploded across the campus. Lights dimmed. Hallways sealed off. Fire suppression units hissed. In one wing, the environmental controls triggered a simulated oxygen leak. In another, temperature rapidly shifted, mimicking atmospheric instability. The Academy AI flooded the systems with malfunctions. Doors failed. Pressure dropped. Systems faltered. It was controlled chaos, but it felt terrifyingly real. Cadets scrambled. Some tried to recall their training modules. Others froze, overwhelmed by alarms and blinking hazard lights. But not Marcus. He was already moving. First, he found two younger cadets choking in a corridor filling with simulated smoke. Instead of activating the designated oxygen bubble, Marcus shoved open a wall panel and yanked them both into a maintenance crawl space. He sealed the hatch behind them and redirected airflow using a manual vent override. One cadet coughed, blinking. What procedure was that? Earth procedure, Marcus grunted, crawling toward the next section. In the power grid chamber, a simulated reactor was overheating. Most cadets were attempting the multi-step cool-down process, reroute circuits, purge excess heat, run diagnostics. They were panicking as the system clock ticked down. Marcus arrived, took one look at the sequence, and bypassed the interface entirely. He popped the casing off the manual coolant valve, pulled a maintenance rod from the wall and slammed the release lever into place. The system hissed, pressure equalized, and the overheating simulation terminated. Coolant purge complete. The AI announced. Cadets stared at him like he'd just rewritten physics. He kept moving. By the time he reached the medical wing, the damage was escalating. A containment pod had failed, releasing a simulated biohazard gas. The others stood outside the sealed area, arguing over the textbook solution. Marcus didn't wait. He wrapped a sterilization tarp around his arms and chest, burst through the door, and dragged the injured cadet out by the collar. He then grabbed a fire suppression canister, duct-taped a rag over the vent, and rerouted the gas into the waste duct using nothing more than elbow grease and sheer will. From a security camera feed in the command center, Commander Trin watched the chaos unfold not with disapproval, but fascination. Instructors were forbidden from interfering in Drill Delta. It was up to the AI to monitor and record. Yet again, Marcus was rewriting the rules where other cadets hesitated, he moved. Where they paused to calculate, he acted. Where they panicked, he improvised. Across the academy, he became a blur of motion-patching pressure leaks, stabilizing artificial gravity, breaking locked doors open with makeshift tools. He used broken drones as barricades, coat sleeves as splints, and his own breath to revive a passed-out medic cadet. By the end of the 2-hour drill, 70% of cadets had been tagged by the simulation as incapacitated or delayed. Marcus had completed 17 hazard zones, saved 9 cadets, and resolved 6 critical failures alone. When the drill finally ended, the lights returned to normal, and the AI made its final announcement. Drill Delta complete. Debriefing files compiled. Notable performance detected. Top performer: Cadet Marcus Vega, Earth. A stunned silence followed. Then applause. Hesitant at first, then growing. Even those who'd scoffed at Marcus before were now silent in their awe. No one said it aloud, but the truth was clear. When disaster struck, procedure wasn't enough. Experience mattered. So did nerve, so did instinct. And Marcus? Marcus was instinct made flesh. Commander Trin stood in the observation room and slowly nodded. He hadn't followed the safety lecture. He was the demonstration again. It had been 4 days since Hazard Drill Delta, and the academy still buzzed with conversation. Cadets huddled in corridors, whispering. Entire species who had barely spoken outside formal sessions were suddenly united in a single question. How did the human do that? Marcus Vega walked the halls as usual, quiet, calm, with the casual stride of someone who didn't see himself as special. But now, everywhere he went, heads turned. Not with contempt or skepticism as before. Now they watched him like he was a live explosive, one that had walked out of hell and smiled. Even the instructors had begun to murmur. And so, with barely contained anticipation, the cadets packed themselves into the grand auditorium for what they thought would be a typical post-drill analysis. The ceiling dome shimmered above them, and the polished floor reflected the anticipation in their faces. Then, Commander Trin stepped forward. But this time, she didn't bring with her a lecture. There were no thick datapads, no endless holograms of color-coded charts. Just one title on the main display. Module 7, Adaptive Safety Tactics, Terran Model. Gasps echoed. Across the room, Trin scanned the crowd. Let me be clear. Cadet Vega broke protocol. He violated over a dozen regulations during Simulation Chamber. 9. He defied safety conventions during Hazard Drill Delta, and in doing so, he outperformed every single cadet in the last 20 cycles. The display behind her shifted. Now it showed live feeds from Drill Delta. Marcus dragging a cadet from a simulated biohazard, repurposing tools on the fly, charging into danger. With no hesitation, but never recklessness. There was a method behind every madness, a logic behind the instinct. He acted, Trin said, her voice steady, because his instincts were born from a world where hesitation kills, where children learn triage before they learn math, where you memorize danger not for tests but for survival. She turned to Marcus, who sat in the third row. Cadet Vega, do you believe your actions are teachable? Marcus stood slowly. No, Commander. A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. But, he continued, I think they can be understood. You can't teach instinct, but you can teach mindset. And mindset saves lives when manuals fall short. Trin nodded once. Well said. Therefore, effective immediately, Module 7 is now part of the Academy curriculum. It will cover situational, improvisation, risk-weighted decision-making, and rapid response adaptation using Terran methods as a model. The murmurs grew louder. Some cadets looked thrilled. Others looked nervous. A thin, silvery Easler cadet raised one of its segmented arms. Commander, is it safe to teach such methods? Isn't that ... encouraging recklessness? Trin didn't answer. Marcus did. It's not about being reckless, he said. It's about knowing when the rules serve you and when you have to serve others instead. Earth taught me something simple. No plan survives reality, so you adapt. Or you die. That silenced the chamber. Trin gestured and the display shifted again. This time, it showed a side-by-side comparison of two cadets in the same simulation, one following every protocol step and failing due to time constraints, the other Marcus bending nearly every rule and saving lives. Adaptability, Trin declared, is not chaos, it is survival, and it is time the Academy embraced that truth. The module description appeared beneath the heading, Adaptive Safety Tactics, Trusting the Mind. When the manual fails, based on field data from Death World, Cadet Marcus Vega, Instructor, TBD. There was a long pause before one of the smaller cadets, a three-eyed Kivik, whispered something aloud. He didn't give a safety lecture. Marcus looked up. The Kivik nodded to itself. He was the lecture. In motion, every step, every breath. He didn't speak it, he showed it. Others nodded. A cadet from the crystalline gore species leaned forward. Next drill, I'm following him. From the back of the room, a gruff voice shouted, Next war, I want him on my squad. Laughter followed, but behind it was truth. Deep, instinctive truth. As the cadets filtered out, Commander Trin remained standing, watching Marcus quietly. He hadn't just changed the outcome of a simulation. He'd changed the philosophy of an interstellar institution. And he did it not with speeches or citations. He did it by demonstration.